My name is Eugen. I've been working as a React developer for Razer Secure for.
Sorry about this.
No worries. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Very nice.
Looks very nice. So, as I was saying, I've been working for a little bit over a year as a React developer at Razer Secure. And today's talk is gonna be touching over the differences between server-side rendering and client-side rendering. So we're just gonna look of how the development from server-side rendering has gone to the client side and then back to server side, and have a little quick touch over a React example of how could we be making use of this server-side rendering technique to improve our app speed and easiness in development wise. So first of all, I just want to quickly touch over the new Instagram page I just created right before this event, which we're going to be trying to send updates over, and some of these events recordings are probably going to end up on this page, so feel free to send a follow. And getting into the content, first of all, the way apps used to work is by the multi-page app model. Basically, this is what I call the OG SSR, because technically speaking, this is still SSR, server-side rendering, because the way it used to work, you would have a client going to a server being like, hey, send me this whateverpage.com, and the server would be doing all the work. Basically, it will be fetching the database, authenticating the user, generating the HTML in itself, because that's the server-side rendering part, and then would be serving the rendered HTML that the client would consume. And the reason we call this the multi-page app model is because every time you would go to a path, you would be asking the server to generate the entire content of it. So the client is basically just asking and getting served. It's a very simple model, and it's like a very efficient one as well. The problem with this model was it did not have enough flexibility. And just a quick note, I just forgot to mention this in the beginning of the talk. Kudos to Theo from T3GG. Some of the content that I'm presenting here has been heavily inspired by him, so please go ahead and watch some of his content on the server-side rendering subject. Very interesting. Getting back to the talk. So, as I was saying, this multi-page app model was a bit inflexible, so we moved into the single-page app model, which is heavily relying on the client. So the way this model works, you have the client which is going to a CDN asking for the content, but instead of actually getting the content as it used to, it's actually getting an empty HTML page that is instructing it to go back to the CDN and request the JavaScript file that is going to be generating the entire app on the client. So the server is here just to give you the instructions of how to generate the app. It's not generating the app for you. So basically what happens, again, you the client go to the backend gives you that empty HTML, and then you go back to the backend, and the backend sends you the JavaScript instructions of how to generate the app. And then there's another step. There's the step of calling all the APIs the app needs in order to be interactive. So you can see it's a lot more expanded. It's like, it used to be like this, very quick and neat. It's like client goes, asks, gets served with everything, nothing on the client side. And we have advanced to this model in which you have this entire path that is actually very long, and it's like very tedious, takes a long time. So this model is a lot more flexible. It allows us to do a lot more things on the client side. For example, if you think of a React app, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of app interactivity and stuff like this. But the problem with it is very slow. And not only very slow, there's another problem. Because you get an empty HTML page, you're basically missing a lot of metadata. So right now you can't really do search engine optimization because the web crawlers don't really know how to go over the HTML files that are supposed to have the metadata that you used to have when the server-side rendering model used to dominate the web. Now you don't have that, so you can't really get some proper search engine optimization done. So we move to the next model, which is the server-side rendering model, the modern one, which is some sort of mixture between the OG SSR and the client server, the client rendering. So the way this works is, so I used here a next.js example, which is basically React with server-side rendering done in place. So the client goes to the backend, and the backend this time actually sends a proper index HTML page, which does have the structure set into place. It has all the components that you need to show. They don't have interactivity yet, because then you are supposed to go back and ask for all the remaining of the JavaScript instructions of how to render and make these pages, like components, interactive. So the benefits of this is you get immediate response from the server with some HTML you can show to the client, so you get quick quick responsiveness. You get something on the screen. But then we get this concept of hydration, which is the next step of going to the CDN, asking for the JavaScript instructions for making it interactive. So it's still not as fast as it used to be in the past, when we just had the server doing everything and sending it back fully interactive, but you get the best of both worlds. You still get the flexibility of the client rendering, but some of the server-side rendering speed. So the next thing I want to touch over, this is some of what Theo talked about. That is a very important concept to understand when it comes to server-side rendering. I want to make the difference of what is really co-location, because co-location is a concept that comes a lot when it comes to coding server-side rendered apps. So co-location is basically the blurred line between backend and frontend, because when you think about a file in a server-side rendered context, what is it really? Is it a front-end file? Is it a back-end file? Is it both? And what do we mean by both? Like, what does it really happen? So first of all, I want to go over what is it, and then I'm going to go over what is it not. It is back-end code in front-end files. So this means server-side rendering not only offers us metadata and search engine optimization by allowing web crawlers to look over the metadata and speed in interactivity. It's not only that, from a development perspective, it makes it very easy for developers to access data. It simplifies the data flow a lot. So it just makes it easier in general to access backend code. So basically, when you write server-side rendered components, you basically write a front-end file with some glorified ways to call the backend in a very nice way. So basically, I want to now say what it is not UI code in backend files. So it's not just some UI that is in the backend. It's just, again, just want to make this very clear. It is a file that gets split into two, actually. So a collocated file gets served into a front-end file and a back-end file, and it is just making it easier from the front end to call the back end in some nice ways. So now this was the main talk of the fundamentals of what server-side rendering is and how it evolved, and I want to touch over how does it help us in a quick example. So I'm not going to get over something too complex. I'm just going to go over a very quick example so we can see how is this useful to us, how is it simplifying the data flow. So let's just create a very random DSX React component file. Oh, I need to open it. So this is just some sort of pseudocode. It's not that really relevant what the component is. I just want to show some flow of the data fetching of the backend that probably all of us saw. Like if you coded React components before, you definitely know what I'm talking about. You're gonna see right now. So the usual flow of what a component is doing is like you have some sort of component here that is probably gonna be fetching some data. So somewhere around your code base, you're gonna be having like a method which is pretty much a promise that is gonna return some sort of data. So I don't know, string array, whatever. So let's return a promise that is gonna be resolving after, I don't know, a timeout. Alright, so what did I write wrong? Yeah, there you go. Alright, so this is just some backend routine we're calling to fetch some data from the database or whatever. So the usual flow of a client-side render component, it used to be pretty much like this. You would have some sort of state you would call from React, and this would be an empty array at first, and then you would have some sort of loading, and you would pretty much have a use effect hook that would be running at the beginning of the life cycle of the component, which would be setting the loading to, this is like, you probably know what I'm doing. You're just setting the loading to true so you can know how to conditionally render some sort of loading component. So pretty much if it's loading, there goes the loading state. Otherwise we're going to display the data. So you would be calling the fetch data routine, and when this would resolve, we would pretty much take the fetch data and set it into the state we declared earlier. So now we would be able to set back the loading to false, and this would be the usual flow of how we would be coding a React component that is going to fetch something from the backend and handle the loading state, which is pretty tedious and annoying and long for no reason. It's just boilerplate. So how the server-side rendering technique can help us in this regard is by making this component asynchronous and literally setting a data await to the fetch data routine, and that's it. You don't need loading, you don't need anything. It's the whole loading state and everything in between is just handled by the fundamentals of HTTP. As long as it's like, as soon as it's done, you just get it. That's it. That's the hydration concept. At first you're just gonna get a component that's gonna be having no data related inside it, and then hydration is gonna happen, and then you're gonna be displaying the whole component with the data inside it.
So where do you handle the loading state? Because it takes time to get that.
There is, okay, I think I have.
Come until it's been loaded in the backend.
Yes, so you would pretty.
Okay, but so you still need a loading state in the front.
No, you have enough. Sorry, you have a good point. So I think I have explained what I wanted to say. You would pretty much just see the HTTP page just loading.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And then you just get back the. Yeah, you're right. You don't. This is not hydration. Sorry for the misunderstanding. This is like you are gonna get the component with the data in place once it's done. Hydration is gonna happen by like making the buttons clickable and stuff like this. This is not hydration. This is just the data flow. Yes, you just see the page loading. Yes, yeah. So this is how it simplifies the general flow of like writing like calls to the backend. Like you can see, this is a much nicer way of doing it.
Yes.
Pretty much. There are many other things that are not like that are making the development life easier, but this is like one of the main important ones, at least for me. Like this is biggest reason I would use server-side render components, because it's making the flow fetching data so much nicer, and obviously the rest of the things of like metadata and stuff, and obviously the interactivity being quicker. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions,